Good afternoon. Hi. It's been a while since we got together, and there's some really important stuff going to be happening in Connecticut and nationwide in the next couple of years, I'm going to say. So today I'm going to venture out and invited somebody really special to be with us today, because he is the state chairman of the Connecticut Republican Party. Now, you say, that's special? You're darn right it is. In a state that we are outnumbered, Republicans, because you know I'm a Republican, okay. We're outnumbered. The unaffiliated are, I think, 41%. The Democrats are 30%, and we're 20-something, I think. So it's really, really important that people get the message. So when you're going to send out a message, where do you start? You start with the top. You bring on the big boy, and you say, okay, now it's up to you to tell people what we stand for. So my special guest today is Ben Proto, chairman of the Connecticut Republican Party. He's here to answer questions. He's here to tell us what the Republicans stand for. He's here to just be a voice that we can ask. I'm also going to put him on the spot by saying, if you got a question, call him in Hartford. I didn't plan on saying that, but I thought I'd throw him under the bus a little bit. So Ben, welcome. And what I'd really like you to do, if you don't mind, is start out by telling our audience a little bit about Ben Proto, who you are, how you got involved, why you chose the Republican Party when you're outnumbered. Go for it.
Well, Mertie, thanks for having me. It's nice to be here. It's nice to be back with you on your first show in a while. I know you got a new set. Looks great.
Beautiful, aren't
Beautiful
they? Yeah.
set. So
Yeah.
congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
So who's Ben Proto? Well, Ben Proto was born and raised in East Haven, and grew up in an Italian family. Dad worked for Marlin Firearms his entire life. When he came home from the war, after World War II, he went to work at Marlin Firearms and was there his entire life. And my mom was a bookkeeper, office manager, an accountant, an administrative assistant, did a lot of different things. We'll go way back, Mertie, she was a key punch operator. Remember key punch?
Key punch,
yeah, we used to have the cards, we have to punch the cards. So Mom did that. I had a brother, Paul. And we grew up in East Haven. We had a great family. We both attended Notre Dame High School in West Haven. And that's where I first got introduced to politics and, quite frankly, the Republican Party. As a senior in high school at Notre Dame, my government teacher was a gentleman by the name of Dick Antonetti. Dick had been a state representative, has been a member of the Republican State Central Committee, but as part of his government class, and to this day they still do it there, which I'm very glad they do, you were required to work on a political campaign. Didn't matter which party, didn't matter who it was for, but that was part of your government class. You had to work on a campaign. And so in 1976, we'll go way back, when I was a senior in high school, I went and worked on Gerald Ford's election campaign in East Haven.
Oh, wow.
And that was my first introduction to politics. It was in 1976. And from there, I went to college in New Hampshire. And I was in New Hampshire in 1980 during the presidential primary in 1980 when Jimmy Carter was running for re-election as president. And we had a very large field of Republican candidates who were running, and being in New Hampshire, which was the first in the nation primary, all of the candidates would come to New Hampshire. They all came to my school at the time. They now go to St. Anselm's College. But where I went to school, they all came, and I got to meet all of those candidates, talk to them one-on-one. It's just like you and I are right now, including Ronald Reagan, George Bush, Howard Baker. And ultimately knocked on doors in New Hampshire for then Howard Baker. He was the then Senate Majority Leader, went on to be Ronald Reagan's Chief of Staff shortly after that. And then went off to law school, came home, got married, and got involved with my Republican Town Committee in Stratford, which is where my wife and I have lived since we've been married since 1986. I have two adult children who are very well off, doing very well, very successful in their careers. Very happy about that. But I grew up in Connecticut like you did. We remember what it was like to be the Connecticut we grew up in. Didn't necessarily have easy times growing up. I grew up in a working class family. But mom and dad always found a way to be able to help my brother and I achieve the goals we wanted to achieve, and understood the concept of making a better tomorrow for us. And that's what I wanted to do for my children. I'm sure it's what you wanted to do, and what so many parents, all parents, want to do for their children, have a better tomorrow for their children. Unfortunately, that's not where we are right now, particularly in Connecticut. And that has to do a lot with what's happening in Hartford on a regular basis. Some of the really, and I think, inane laws that are being passed by the Democrat majority up there. And I've watched my beloved Connecticut really kind of tumble from where it once was, which was the pinnacle. What states wanted to be like Connecticut, now they try very hard not to be like Connecticut. And when I look at state rankings, Mertie, and I see that we are at the bottom of everything you want to be at the top of, and we are at the top of everything you want to be at the bottom of, you sit there and say, man, something's got to change. And the way you change things, and we were talking about this a little bit before we came on the air, that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same result. When we keep reelecting the same people in Hartford to make the same decisions, and we can't figure out why we're not getting any better, well, that's why. You need to change the people up there. And what I'm doing, what people around the state are doing, are trying to change the people up there and elect common sense Republicans to come up with common sense solutions to the problems that we face.
And we are facing some tough, decisions in the future, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Our financial situation, our tax, we just came out, I think we were just ranked second or third in the highest property taxes in Connecticut. We regularly rank at the bottom of fiscal management for states. Connecticut, on a regular basis, is either first or second in credit card debt.
Wow, I didn't get that. But you know what? What you just said to me this morning, I was doing my homework, okay? Yeah. And I found out where we stood on some of these, polls or whatever you want to call them, and I was shocked. Mm-hmm. I said, Connecticut, we're a little state and we're ranking at the bottom of some of these things, or when it comes to inflation or something, we're way up here, and I'm going, when did this happen? How did this happen? Mm-hmm. But now, don't misunderstand me, Ben. I came out of a foster home. This state has been absolutely wonderful for me. Don't miss any other country. My sister and I would have been living on the street, okay? Mm-hmm. It's been wonderful. It's been wonderful. And I'm so proud to be an American. Mm-hmm. I'm so proud to be an American. And that's why you and I are sitting here today mm-hmm. talking, to the viewers about don't let them destroy our state and our country.
Mertie, it's interesting. People, sometimes forget the words of our founding documents. And the one that always got me was, in order to form a more perfect union, our founding fathers understood that we would never be perfect.
Do that again.
That the concept is for America to become a more perfect union.
Okay, now wait.
Go ahead.
Okay, everybody that's a viewer out there that has children, you have children. Have they ever heard that in school? Have they ever been told what the background of this country is? Mom, Dad, it's time for you to pick up and give those kids the background they need. And I apologize.
That's quite all right, Mertie. But that's our goal as Americans, is to create a more perfect union. We're never going to be perfect. Nothing is ever perfect. But we should strive to be as close to perfect as we can. And we've done that for centuries in this country. Look, whether some of our more progressive friends or not would like to admit to it, America saved the world at least twice.
At least.
In one century alone. And we are still the greatest economic power the world has ever known. We are one of the great global powers. We are one of the great military powers, and we yield that power in a benevolent way for the most part. We're not always perfect with that either. But we again, our goal is to be better at it. And so when I look at what's happening in Hartford, when I look at what's happening in Washington, when I look at what's happening around the world, I say there's got to be a better way to do this. And it seems that we've gotten off the track of what I call, what you and I have every day, Mertie.
Yes.
Common sense.
Common sense.
Common sense, right? Not every problem is easy. Not
Nope.
every problem has an easy solution to it. But every problem, if you look at it from a common sense perspective, will lead you to a solution that makes sense. And we've really fallen off of that track, and I think that's the change that we need, and I think Republicans offer that common sense solution, bringing back the kitchen table discussions that we've all had with our children, that you and I had when we were children sitting around the kitchen table, and we've lost that. Because we've decided to make all of these things very complicated. It's not to say that a lot of them aren't, but we tend to over-discuss and under-listen.
Under-listen.
Right, and I've said that to my candidates. I said, you know, my dearly departed mother, she was a nice Italian lady, would always say, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Right?
I love it.
You should listen twice as much as you talk. And as you can see, I don't take that advice very well often as a good Italian boy.
And you're talking to an Irishman?
Right.
You know,
We all talk
I
well.
also understand.
But if we just stop and listen to the people,
Right.
we listen to what they're going through, we listen to what's happening in their lives, suddenly you say, there's a solution to these problems. We just need to listen to the people who are smarter than the politicians, and that's the voters.
Right. The problem is that, as you just so succinctly said, they don't listen. I mean, look at the inflation rate. I mean, look at the taxes. I mean, you go out and you buy, I'm going to pick something, cereal, you're going to pay tax on it. I can't remember if I did.
Yeah.
But anyway, all the things that you used to just go and get, now it's got a 3% tax on it, or you're paying this much on gas and taxes. And there's all these sneaky little taxes that people don't recognize, realize are out there.
And one of the taxes that I call it a tax is inflation. So I'll give you an example. A pound of butter
Yes.
in 2021 to 2023 is up 16% for a pound of butter.
For a pound of butter.
For a pound of bread, if you put it in bread, is up 23%. Gasoline prices are up over 20%. And you can go right down the list.
Exactly.
Everything, you know, we have seen overall price inflation for goods and services that we buy every day, that are just, that we need every day, are up almost 20% overall when we put the entire basket together.
Yep.
From 2021 to 2023. I know, and what does that mean? Well, we know wages haven't kept up.
Nope.
So if wages are not keeping up, but prices are going up, you have to find a way to pay for them, or you make decisions on what you're buying or not buying, or what you're doing or not doing as a family. So maybe you're not taking that vacation. Maybe you're not going to the beach for a weekend with your kids so they can have some fun. You know, maybe you're wearing last year's clothes, whatever it might be, because we can't afford it, or we're using our credit cards more.
Exactly.
And we're seeing credit card rates that are 28, 29, 30, 32% now. And what's Joe Biden's solution to the credit card problem? We're going to mandate an $8 late fee. So basically what you're telling me, President Biden, is, you know, people can't afford to pay their credit card bill, so you're going to make the late fee cheaper.
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense. That's not a common sense solution.
No, it's crazy. It's
Yep.
just one of those things. And my heart breaks for, I have a couple of great-grandchildren now, great-grandchildren, right? And I look at the price that my kids, grandkids, are paying for diapers. I went, I don't believe this. $53 for a thing of diapers.
Yeah.
And I'm going, and then buying cereal, and as you say, baby food, and all this. You know, I know that these young people have to take all the overtime they can get away from their families. You know, they have to give up what they would like to do. Would I like to play golf with my best friend? No, I can't afford it because I've got to pay groceries or my light bill or my phone bill this month. And I'm looking around and I'm going, when the heck did we get into this mess that the state of Connecticut is, and across the nation? Okay, all right now. But how do we fix it?
Well, first thing we have to understand is it took us a long time to get here. So it's not going to get fixed overnight.
Okay.
Right? So, if it took us 30, 40 years to get here, you're not going to just suddenly change the light
I'm
switch
sorry,
and fix
Ben, but you're not cheering me up at all.
But the way
Go home.
But the other side of that is the way that you change it is by changing the people making the decisions. If, look, let's just take the president of the state senate, a gentleman by the name of Martin Looney. I've known Marty Looney for many, many years. I will tell you, Marty is a good man.
Yeah.
Marty has been in office for over 40 years. Got elected in the early 1980s to the state legislature.
40 years.
And you sit there and you look at him and go, okay, maybe you're just not the right guy to be here anymore.
Exactly.
There's a new way of thinking. There's a new way of doing things. You come from a very different generation. Look, that's my generation, your generation. I get it.
Absolutely.
I get it. We're all boomers.
Yeah, honey.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for my grandchildren and great-grandchildren, do you think I would think about the cost of diapers or baby food or milk or cereal? No.
Right.
But that's family concerns.
And so when we look at who's making the decisions, you've got to decide, and you have to look at it and say, okay, this is my state rep or my state senator, and they're running for their 12th term.
Enough.
Maybe it's time somebody else gets up there and gets some other ideas. I think it should be a Republican.
Right.
I think we have better ideas. I think we have a better a way to do this. But you kind of look at it and go, maybe it's time that we look at some different people up there making the decisions. And that's what we're going to try to do in November of this year, and as we move forward into 2026, into 2028. And in between, in the odd years, as you well know, we were talking about when your husband was first selectman.
Yep.
We are fortunate in Connecticut that the vast majority of our towns are run by Republican leaders, mayors and first selectmen or council boards of legislative bodies. And when we look at those towns, we know they are better run, they are better managed, they have better mill rates and tax rates for the most part than those towns that are run by Democrats. And so if we just translate that to Hartford, or we translate that to a true Republican operating majority in Washington, I think we see better opportunities going forward. And again, we spend way too much time talking about what happened years back as opposed to where we're going to be years forward.
For our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. Now, I'm going to throw you under the bus. You ready?
I'm used to it.
You don't mind being thrown under the bus?
You probably back it up over me too.
Where do you stand on early voting?
I support early voting.
You do?
Yes, for a number of reasons.
Okay.
Not the least of which is as we look at case studies across the country where early voting has been in place for a long time, Republicans do better in early voting. It's not absentee voting. It's different. It's not mail-in.
I know.
You have to go there. It's in person. You have to vote in person. So I support early voting. I think it's a good thing for the state of Connecticut. I do think there are changes that need to be made to the program that has been implemented. I think we will see those changes coming after this year. This is our first year doing it. But I think overall it's a good thing for people. I think it will help with our turnout. In particular, it will help with our Republican supporters.
Okay. I'm going to disagree.
Okay.
Okay, fair is fair, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we're going to have early voting, 14 days. Okay. So who's going to pay for that?
That's a whole different discussion.
Oh, no.
That's a different discussion, and I agree with
Are you sure
with
you're
you on
not
that.
a Democrat? You're dancing. You're dancing.
No. I agree with you on that. Matter of fact, I had a conversation yesterday with Stephanie Thomas about that very issue.
Exactly.
And how it's going to get paid for, how it's implemented, and how it's operated. So as I said, I support the concept of early voting. Do I think there are changes that to be made to the program that they have designed? Yes, I do. But the concept of early voting, the ability for people to have a period of time where they have to go in person, present an identification, get a ballot, fill the ballot out there in front of elections officials, not seeing what they vote for, but
yeah.
they're there, and then vote it and leave, as opposed to having people run around with absentee ballot applications like we saw in Bridgeport, where they're stuffing ballots into a ballot
yeah,
box.
I saw that
That's
on
a
the
very
news.
different thing.
Yeah.
So I agree with you that we have to look at changes to the program that the legislature designed. I believe Secretary Thomas, who is a Democrat, and as I said, she and I have had some conversations. She agrees that there's probably going to have to be changes to the program as well. She's fighting for money for towns. She's fighting for money for education, because the legislature gave her no money to educate the voters on how to use this system. So I agree with you that we need to look at changes to the system, but the concept of early voting itself, I think, is a good thing.
Okay, we're going to disagree.
Okay.
Two Republicans are going to disagree.
Shocking.
Yeah. To me, okay, 14 days of early voting is looking for trouble. Okay, yes, it'll be monitored in some place, but other places won't be monitored.
They all have to be, just so we're clear, they all have to be monitored. It's a polling place just like you go to on election day. There's poll workers, there's registrars, there's moderators, there's ballot clerks.
Yep, okay, 14 days.
Yep.
14 days now,
Yep.
keeping in mind,
Yep.
which means that me, the average taxpayer,
Yep.
is going to be paying for people to be there, people to get fed, anything and everything that has to do. It's going to cost thousands of dollars. It's not going to be cheap.
No, it's not.
Okay, so it's the taxpayer right now that's up to his or her eyeballs in inflation and all that, going to want to say, oh yeah, let's change it and let everybody have 14 days of voting, when they're saying, I barely can keep my head above water. Why are you doing that now?
And I think that gets back to redesigning the system. I think the system itself that they have designed has flaws to it. It's not the voting part of the system that is flawed. I think it's the management side of the system they have to look at, and how it's managed, how it's funded, and how it's run. Now, one of the issues that we have in Connecticut that we don't have across the country in most states, and I always refer to it as our single greatest strength and our single greatest weakness at the same time. We don't have regional government in Connecticut. We don't have county government in Connecticut.
No, we don't.
The vast majority of states have county government, run their states via counties. And within the counties, they have towns or townships or boroughs or villages or whatever they call them. But the county is the overall writing governmental structure for a larger area,
Right.
which we don't have in Connecticut.
We have counties, but they're not.
We have counties on a
Yeah, I was
map.
going to say, yeah.
There's counties on a map.
Middlesex County,
Right.
this
And
county,
even if
that
you
county.
look at what we've created in the form of regional governments, whether it's the COGS, the Council of Governments, or the small town governments, they're not even within counties. They cross what we would call county lines that are on a map. So one of the problems that we have in designing a system for early voting in Connecticut is the fact that we have 169 separate towns, all of whom run their own elections, and all of whom should run their own elections. That's the way our system is designed. So when you design a voting program, you have to design that system so that it fits within the construct of 169 separate towns. And when I look at that, I say, okay, we've designed a system that says we have 14 days of early voting. Every town has to have 14 days of early voting.
Saturdays and Sundays?
Saturdays and Sundays as well. That's the way the system is designed. The town of Union, if you've never been to Union, it's up on the Mass border. If you take 84 and you enter into Massachusetts, you go through Union.
Yep.
It has about 600 total voters. It's a very
wow.
small town, has
I was
about
gonna
600
say,
total
yep.
voters. They still have to man a polling place for 14 days. You go to the city of Stamford. City of Stamford has 100,000+ voters. 14 days.
Right.
The likelihood that people in Stamford will be going into that voting place for 14 days is a lot higher than the likelihood that people in Union are going to be going into that voting place for 14 days.
Absolutely.
If everybody showed up to vote in Union early voting, they'd be done in 4 days.
Yeah, exactly.
But they still got to be there.
You still got to pay for that 14
Right, so that's
days.
why I think we have to look at how the system was designed, how it's managed and structured, and how it's paid for.
That's, as I said, I'm thinking about my family and
me.
them having to pay for all these things. And I'm thinking about the taxes, okay? Just between you and I, okay? Town taxes, right? Property taxes, income tax, and I've got a whole bunch of
Oh,
them.
you can go
that
through
I'm-
sales tax, grocery receipts tax,
Yeah.
car tax, gasoline tax, energy tax.
Exactly.
I can go through tax after tax. We have more taxes in Connecticut than we know what to do with.
Exactly. How do we get away from that? Because every time I feel like the governor and some of the legislature think of us as a candy store. And they're always wanting to get the treats, okay? And the treats are my money, your money, okay? And the young family that's struggling to get ahead or pay their mortgage. What do we do? How do we help them?
So I think there's a couple things. Again, it's changing the people who are making the decisions. And you know, what you call treats, I would
Yes.
have another word for.
Go ahead.
Votes.
Yes.
Money gets you votes.
Money gets you votes.
So if I have more money to spend in areas where I want to increase my vote totals,
Yes.
if I'm a Democrat, and I can sprinkle money into those areas that I can take out of areas like Greenwich or New Canaan or Wilton or Simsbury, you know, wealthy towns.
Yeah, that won't even notice.
But that in theory they won't notice. But
Yeah, but
you know, they're
you know
not,
what I mean?
Right.
But they're not gonna make a big deal out of it 'cause it's not milk.
But then we get into, you know, using money to buy votes. And that's been an age, I mean, since the day the first person voted, somebody
Right.
figured out, hey, if I put more money over there, I get more votes.
Exactly.
You know?
It's right.
So, I mean, that's
a fact of life.
It's a fact of life. So, I think it's understanding what the priorities of the state government, of town government, of our federal government should be.
Right.
And should it be, and there are people in Hartford who believe this, and people in Washington who believe this, it should be all things to all people. I don't necessarily agree with that.
Neither
I
do
think
I.
we have a core responsibility as a government. It's to ensure our safety, it's to ensure our health, it's to ensure our, if you're nationally, our national defense, it's to ensure our border is secure, it's to ensure that, you know, our healthcare system works, it's to ensure that our schools work, since we have a public education system in this country. How are our schools working? Are our children learning? Are they advancing? You know, do our roads work? And there's also, you know, other things. Do we have clean water? Do we have clean air? Do we have access to energy? Do we have access for our businesses to be able to grow and flourish and create more jobs? Those are important priorities that we should be concentrating on and focusing on. We sometimes go, not sometimes, we always kind of go off and start doing a lot of other things that don't necessarily serve the core purpose of government. They do, however, serve the core purpose of getting elected.
Okay. Now, let's talk something that makes my hair stand on end. Okay? You're sitting in Hartford. I'm sitting in Cromwell, Connecticut, or East Hampton, or Middletown. All right, okay? And you're sitting up there and you say, I think for the environment, by 2035, every car in the state of Connecticut has to be electric. Who are you sitting in Hartford telling me in a country that prides itself on freedom, okay? Don't misunderstand me. I don't smoke. You want to have a cigarette? Have a cigarette, okay? I'm not going to tell you to stop it, okay?
Yep.
Same thing with this EV stuff
Yep.
that's going on. It drives me crazy that, again, the government is trying to take over something. So we're going to say, you have got to have an electric vehicle.
Right.
I don't want an electric vehicle.
Right.
I happen to like my old gas guzzler car,
Yep.
okay?
And you should have the ability to be able to drive that car and buy that car if you want to. But again, it gets into short-sightedness of politicians often, and the ability to try to be all things to all people or to find more votes. So what do we have? We have a large swath of Democrats in Hartford Not all of them.
I know.
Not
Yeah,
all of them,
no.
which is why this issue is getting kicked down the road a little bit, because they
Oh,
can't
it
get everybody on
sure
board,
is,
which is
yeah.
very unusual for the Democrats.
I just read that today. Yes.
But you have a situation where, they wanted to adopt the California standard. Whenever you choose to adopt California standard on
trouble.
anything, you're in trouble. There's a federal standard out there that probably makes a little more sense if you wanted to look at it. But the reality of the situation is, the Democrats wanted to mandate all new motor vehicle sales in 2035 had to be electric. What they didn't take into account was, we don't have an electric infrastructure that can support that.
That made me laugh.
We
You're
don't have a
absolutely
grid
right.
that can support that. We don't have the ability to get charging stations where they need to be, particularly in the more rural parts of Connecticut.
Oh, right.
And in order to do all of those things by 2035, your Eversource or UI bill will skyrocket even more than it is now.
And it's going up now.
And it's going up now. So they didn't even put the cart before the horse. They took the electric vehicle and put it way down there before they even found a battery.
I know. That blew my mind.
And that's the issue, is that we do things, government does things because it sounds good, it makes certain constituency groups feel good, but there's no long-term thought process on how it's going to be impacted. And quite frankly, if you wanted to move to a more environmentally friendly motor vehicle, it's not electric, it's hydrogen.
Yeah.
Hydrogen vehicles, city buses, you know how many city buses are running on natural gas and hydrogen right now? And the ones that are running on, they want to mandate every school bus in the state of Connecticut has to be an electric school bus. And we know what happens when those things catch fire. There's another issue that they don't want to talk about. The fire cannot be put out.
Oh, lovely. See, that's
so
something
they have
that you're absolutely right. That's something that has not been
Right.
brought up. I don't want my grandchildren
Right.
on a bus. We can't put a fire out.
Right, if it should catch on fire. And we've seen that there's been a few electric vehicle fires in the state of Connecticut, and if you watch the news, all they do is put water on it to try to keep it from spreading because they can't put it out. They're very dangerous. The car itself, buying the car itself, it's a very expensive car.
Like $149,000 or something?
The battery life is not as long as you would think it is, and replacing a battery is tremendously expensive. You're better off getting a new car than replacing the battery. You have to put a charging station in your home, which sucks electricity, which increases your bill. So there's a lot of reasons to look at this and say, there may be better ways to find more environmentally friendly motor vehicles that aren't run on fossil fuel. I can understand we should look at those things. We should never not look at better ways to do things. But when you're doing that, again, common sense, before I say you must buy this, I have all these steps in here that I have to check off before I get to you must buy this.
Absolutely.
And they didn't do any of this. They just said you must buy this.
And see, that's what drives me crazy. The United States of America was founded by people who said, you're not going to tell us what we have to do anymore. We're done. We're going to make our own decisions here in this country. We're going to do the Tea Party, okay? The tea, when they threw the tea, and it's not the Tea Party, you know what I'm
I
saying.
know.
But
The
anyway,
Boston Tea Party.
I had to. But anyway, and I'm saying to myself, how long is it going to take for people to sit up and say, stop telling me what I can eat and what I can't eat? Stop telling me what I have to drive and I can't drive. Stop telling me this, stop telling me that. Don't misunderstand me. If they suggest, if somebody suggests, Mertie, I think it would be a nice idea if you got an electrical vehicle. Maybe I would think about it. But don't come down from the mount up in Hartford and say, Mertie, you have to have one.
And look, one of the very fundamental principles of the Republican Party is the belief in the individual. And the individual is in the best position to be able to make decisions affecting themselves and their families. And so long as those decisions don't hurt someone else, that person or that family should be able to make the decisions on how they best want to live their life and raise their family. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't live within certain societal norms. We have certain societal norms. We have laws on the books for a reason.
Exactly.
Everyone should abide by society. And look, I am a believer in Mertie, I believe you probably are too, that we should be looking out for each other.
Absolutely,
You know,
that's the way
always,
yeah.
check your neighbor's house. You know, if their neighbor's away and you see the light come on, oh, that's probably, maybe you should say something. You know, we have to look out for each other. That's how we do best, when we're looking out for each other. But at the end of the day, you and I should be able to make the decisions that best impact our lives, so
agree.
long as what my decision does not hurt you.
Exactly, I agree.
And that's, I think, a founding principle of the Republican Party when we came into being in the 1850s, the late 1850s, to fight slavery.
Yep.
That we believed in the sanctity of each human life, and each person, that no one should be enslaved.
Exactly.
Everyone should have the ability to do what they do, and so that's a key component of the Republican Party. And whether it's buying an electric vehicle, or
Right.
where your children go to school,
Yep.
or what church or synagogue you go to,
Right.
and what God you
Your
pray
choice.
to, your choice.
Not my choice.
And that's why
Your
they're the
choice.
First Amendment, not the Eighth Amendment to the Constitution. Those are very important things that our founding fathers said, these are key, that we came from a country where we did not enjoy these freedoms.
Exactly.
And so, I think oftentimes we forget, and we get back to where I was saying before, when you were saying to parents, make sure your children understand our founding documents. Those documents are important. They were written for a reason. They were written by people who are a lot smarter than a lot of the people who are out there today, who had the ability to see where we could go.
Yes.
And designed a government to take us there. And if we just abide by what those founding fathers wrote, and we understand the importance of those documents and the importance of those founding clauses within those documents, we'd be far better off.
Oh, I agree 100%. But are we teaching that to our children in school?
No.
No.
Nope.
No. I grew up in the best of times.
Yeah.
As I said, I grew up as a foster child. But in school, okay, in those days, and I'm thinking back to 5th grade and Mrs. Turner, okay, she started every single day of our school day, okay, the same way. We said the Pledge of Allegiance. We sang a little song, whether it was patriotic or what, She read us a poem, always lighthearted and bringing people up, that kind of stuff. And we were in a class where you didn't think about, I was a foster child.
Right.
My best friend was a black gentleman, okay. We all started out together as a unit. And now we've got all these little silos. And I'm saying to myself, what is going to bind them together for the first time when we really hit a roadblock?
That's going to be the interesting part, to see how that works. And I look at where we are. I look at my generation being the boomer generation, and the Gen X generation that kind of followed us. And I look at my daughter and son are millennials. My son is on the cusp of Gen Z, whatever that means.
Whatever that means, I love it.
But I look at the generations today, the younger generations today, and the single biggest issue in my mind, and it's one that I don't know, it's not that I don't know, I don't believe we can fix, is the instant access to everything.
Yes.
And the ability for anybody to put anything out into the world and for people to believe it to be true simply because they read it on TikTok, or they read it on Instagram, or they read it on X, or it was on Facebook, or on Pinterest, or on WhatsApp, or we're trading things back and forth. It's in your stack systems, whatever it might be. And suddenly it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Why is it true? Well, it said it. Well, but how do you know that? Well, because it wouldn't be, and we now have, before we came on the air, we were talking about, I was in Cromwell this weekend. We did a training session for campaign management program, and we did a whole segment on digital programs for campaigns. And the gentleman who presented asked the group a question. He said, "How much time do I have to get your attention in a digital atmosphere?"
Good question.
Take a guess.
I wouldn't even know.
5 seconds.
5 seconds.
Yeah, 5 seconds. If you do not grab someone's attention within 5 seconds, they will swipe to the next thing, they will go to the next video, they will go to the next story, they will go to the next thing. You have 5 seconds to get them. That's the average time it takes to get someone's attention. And if you do get their attention, they will be gone within 30 to 35 seconds and move on to the next thing.
That's kind of scary.
So you have to figure out how to deliver messages. And people who've become very good at it can deliver a message that may or may not necessarily be factually correct in a very short period of time.
So how do we protect our children from something like that?
That's the issue. It's I think spending time with them, and like my kids came of age when cell phones first kind of became prevalent.
Yeah.
You know, we now have, you know, most
8-year-olds.
8-year-olds. We now have 2-year-olds. I say, you know, they come out of their mother with a phone in their hand now. And that's a whole nother thing, you know, expectant mothers, pregnant fathers, pregnant persons. That's a whole nother conversation we had at the Capitol this week on a whole different topic. But that whole instantaneous news cycle where you and I had to wait for Walter Cronkite to come on the air.
Exactly.
Or we had to wait for the newspaper to be delivered the next morning to get the news. Now it's literally seconds.
Yep.
It's seconds. And I always tell people, again, when you and I got our newspaper in the morning, if the reporter got it wrong, they didn't run around to everybody's house and pick up the newspapers and give you a new one.
No, they did not.
Right? Today, they do that. They do it electronically. So it's more important for news organizations to be first than to be correct, because they can always go back and edit the digital story.
And yes.
Right? They can always change. They don't have to go and collect everybody's newspaper off their kitchen table from that morning and give them a new one. They just change the story. Right?
Yeah, so you could read it in the morning.
It'd be very different in the afternoon. But they were first. Because why do they want to be first? Because if they're first, you know what's going to happen when you read that story?
You're going to believe it.
Well, no, you're going to get a pop-up ad to buy something.
I didn't even think about that. You're absolutely
That's how they make their money.
Right.
That's how they make their money, right? It's not important to be right or wrong. It's important to be first. So you'll click on the banner, you'll go read the story, and an ad for your grandchild's diapers will pop up with a 50% coupon on it.
I never thought of that, Ben. I never thought about that.
And that's what the digital world is. It's right, and that's what we've done. Look, we have people who are making millions of dollars a year, who are influencers, who contribute absolutely nothing to society, but get paid to be on digital media to carry a particular pocketbook or to wear a particular designer or to do a particular thing. And again, the digital world is something that we really our generation does not understand.
No, of course.
And we have to get better at it. And that's going to be what takes us into the next phase of our world, is how we utilize the digital world to deliver news and content, and being able to understand the difference between the fake stuff and the real stuff.
And the real stuff.
Yep.
And that's really kind of frightening when you come right down to it, because yes, years ago you got the newspaper, you read the newspaper, and you said, oh wow, you know, something's going on in Middletown, you know. And that was it. But now you could say, oh, now something's going on in Middletown, but then on the TV, 2 minutes later it says, no, that's all fake. You know, so I mean, where do we draw the line though, Ben?
That's for each person to figure out for themselves, and how they understand and how they absorb that particular content.
Wow, that's really kind of earth-shattering to think about what the next generations are going to face.
And the thing about it is, Mertie, it's not the first time we've been there. You know, I mean, think about it. When radio came into being, right? No one knew what the heck that thing was, and you got this voice coming out of a box. You didn't know where it was coming from or who it was or what it was, and suddenly it became the phenomena, and
Yep.
everybody had the radio, and everybody stood around the radio and listened to the radio and listened to the radio shows. And then what happened? We got TV,
Yes, yes.
right? And suddenly you saw the person on the screen, and they were talking to you, and they were delivering news to you, or they're delivering entertainment to you. And then what happened? Well, we get the color, so now we can actually see in kind of real life, and it became more, we went from, you and I can remember, I guarantee you remember, because I know I remember it, when a TV station would sign off at night. What would they do? They'd play the Star Spangled Banner
every time.
And then you went to the color circle and the
Yeah,
right?
and it's
and
gone.
then in the morning when they
Yep.
come back on, what would they do? Play the Star Spangled Banner
And you
again.
know
and you
that-
know the TV station was back on. Now it's 24/7, 365.
Exactly, exactly.
And we live in a news cycle that's literally seconds long, not minutes, hours, or days.
Right. This is really something that parents need to think about now. I mean, don't let your children be influenced by what they see on some of these TikTok shows and all
You
that.
have to talk to your kids.
Got to talk to your
them.
kids.
And if you have to know what they're doing and know what they're watching, and explain to them when you see something, say, yeah, you probably saw this on TikTok or you saw it on one of your social media apps. That's not real, right?
Right.
And this is why it's not real. And have that conversation. Because again, at the end of the day, Mertie, parents are the primary educators for their children.
Exactly.
And it's incumbent upon them to help their children understand the world they live in and the world that they're going to be living in. And the more parents can do that with their children, look, we live in a world where it's really hard to monitor that because, as you said, who's working the double shift, who's working extra hours, who's doing this, and suddenly the phone becomes the babysitter, like the TV was a lot of our babysitters.
I saw
right?
that.
Yeah. The radio became a babysitter.
Yep.
So it becomes a babysitter in some way, shape, or form. And parents have to kind of regain control of that, I think, and teach their kids how to absorb that content and understand the content.
And question it.
And question the content. Nothing wrong with questioning the content. Whether it's
Exactly.
you're seeing it on TikTok or, quite frankly, it's coming from your teacher. It's
Yep.
okay to say, I don't think that's right, and this is
Exact-
why. And
Yep.
have that discussion. That's not disrespectful.
No. But a
You
lot of
can't
them now
be disrespectful
don't.
the way you do it,
Yep.
but simply disagreeing is not disrespectful. You
Exactly.
can disagree without being disagreeable.
Exactly. You can have an opinion.
Right.
And as you and I started out, talking about electrical vehicles and all this stuff, I think it's great to have an opinion.
Right.
Because that's what makes democracy work, is that you sit there and say, yes, we should do this, and Mertie sits there and says, no, we should not do that.
Yep.
And that's what it's all about,
Yep.
So that's really, really great.
Yep.
So anyway, anything else you'd like to bring to our attention or?
We were talking about this a little bit before we came on the air. Get involved. Don't just complain. Don't call the radio show and complain. Don't, write the letter to the editor and just complain. Don't put stuff on Twitter or Facebook or any of the other social medias complaining. Go do something. Pick a candidate that you support. I would ask you to check the Republican candidates, but I know there's people out there who would support their Democrat candidates.
Of course.
That's fine. Again, it's okay to have that choice. Go knock on the door for that candidate. Go raise money for that candidate. Or better yet, become a candidate.
Yeah.
If you think you got a better idea, better solution, put your name on a ballot, go talk to the people, tell them why you think you'd be better than the person who's there, and go convince them to support you over the person who's there, and go make the change that you think is out there. But complaining and doing nothing just continues the cycle that we're in.
And we don't need that.
No.
We need to move forward.
Right.
We need to be,
We
I
live in a
agree.
participatory democracy. You have to participate in this democracy in order for it to work. If you choose not to participate, look, at the end of the day, there's an old saying, people get the government they deserve, not the government they want.
They want. You're absolutely
The way
right.
you get the government you want is you participate. The way you get the government you deserve is you sit back and do nothing
and complain.
and complain.
And complain about it. I agree with you 100%. Well, anyway, I really enjoy it today. I've enjoyed us talking to each other. But to close out what we've been talking about, I always close out, on the other hand, by acknowledging the men and women in our military that have our backs.
Yep.
I acknowledge the police that are out there making sure that we're safe on our streets.
Yep.
The volunteers who lead the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts and collect money for charities that need help and all. So I like to close off with saying like something that's positive. So what would you like to tell the viewers out there that's positive?
I am positively convinced that Connecticut is a great state.
Oh, I like that.
I am positively convinced that the people who live in this state are good people, are caring people, people who want to see their friends and neighbors and family succeed and be happy. I believe that we have a pretty good government in Connecticut. I think we have some people that don't make necessarily good solutions, but I think we have a state that we can be proud of. I am positively proud of the fact that I was born here, that I was raised here, that I've raised my children here, that they are succeeding in life.
I love it.
And I know I have so many friends whose children were raised here as well. They were raised here, whose children are doing well. They have done well. At the end of the day, Mertie, I love the state of Connecticut.
That's great.
You know, I've said to people, when you look at the state of Connecticut, we have a beautiful state. If, you know, we're here in Cromwell today. If you've never been to the northeast corner, if you've never been to the seashore, if you've never been to the Litchfield Hills, if you've never been to Fairfield County, if you've never been into the Hartford area, go see it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, enjoy.
Enjoy. You know, we go from very rural farms to very urban centers.
Yes.
And the people who live in those places are good people. They're caring people. And I think at the end of the day, to end on a positive note, be proud of the state we live in, be proud of what it is we do, and be proud of the fact that you want to make it better.
I like that. I like that. You want to make it better. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We really appreciated it. I really, really appreciated Ben coming and spending some time with us. And I hope you enjoyed this program. And I want to thank Comcast for, you know, we don't have to pay them. They just let us come and have opinions, and nobody tells us that we can't have an opinion, and nobody drags us off into jail if they don't like what we say. So I'd like to end up this program today by saying, God bless America, and thank you.